As early as 11,000 BC, man was making utensils out of clay. This was the birth of pottery. Modern pottery is divided into three categories: porcelain, stoneware, and earthenware. What differentiates them is the mixture of clays and the firing process. This earthenware piece starts with a technical drawing based on an artist's conception. Following the specs, they use a series of specialized tools to sculpt a plaster model on an electric potter's wheel. They check the diameter with calipers. The model is 7% larger than the finished piece will be to compensate for shrinkage that will occur during drying and firing. They sculpt some parts by hand and glue them on. Using this model, they cast a master mold made out of a rigid type of plaster called gypsum. They now use this master mold to cast a production mold out of rubber, or in this case, plaster. First, they pour in the plaster, using their hand to break up any air bubbles that would cause defects in the casting. They leave it to air dry in a warm room overnight. Once it's ready, they can extract it, a delicate operation that takes 15 minutes. This production mold has to cure for 48 hours before going into service. It'll be good for 200 castings. And it'll be identified by the model number on its side. Earthenware is made of talc, a mineral called nepheline syenite, a dark beige clay known as ball clay, another mineral called silica, and a white clay known as kaolin, all mixed with 40% water. They pour the mix into the production mold with careful, even pressure, again to avoid creating air bubbles. The plaster mold slowly absorbs the water, leaving behind a moist earthenware lining half a centimeter thick. After about a half hour, this lining hardens and they can dump out the surplus liquid. They cut off the excess earthenware at the top. Then, after another 45 minutes or so, extract the piece from the mold. Workers have to handle the earthenware gingerly, with even pressure. If one finger presses just a bit too hard, it'll show up as a dent, but only after the piece is fired. After a 24-hour drying period, workers then carefully shave off the seam left by the two halves of the mold. They rub the piece on wet stone to even out the top and bottom. Then they smooth the surface with a wet sponge. Unlike stoneware, which comes out glossy after firing, earthenware remains dull. So to make it shiny and colorful, they apply specialized glazes and enamel paints. Finally, they spray the piece from top to bottom in a transparent glaze to give it an overall sheen. Then it's off to a room-sized oven called a kiln for an 8-hour firing, during which time the temperature climbs to more than 1,000 degrees Celsius, then a 2-hour cool down. The intense heat activates the pigments in the paints and makes the colors come alive, turning what was once a lump of clay into a work of art.